Well, welcome back once again, folks. It's Chris here with Indaba Africa, bringing you news about the continent, Friday, May 22nd, 2020. Today's topic is once again South African Airlines. It's high time for Pretoria to end its vanity project. Time for South Africa's government to liquidate South African Airlines. SAA, in the age of COVID-19, is a sinkhole that is no longer a luxury the government of South Africa can afford as it attempts to deal with the Wuhan coronavirus or COVID-19. South African Airlines has been in the red since 2011, has not turned a profit since that year. In fact, the airline is in such disarray that it has not released financial results since 2017. Finally, this week, that situation was rectified with the delivery of financial results covering the last 3 years. Now, a private-held going concern can't run a business in this fashion. You have to let the board, shareholders know what's happening with the company. You can't sit for 3 years and not deliver financial results. Yet this is what South African Airlines has done. So we see the financial results finally released, and they come out as follows. In 2017, South African Airlines lost 5.4 billion rand. In 2018, it lost 5.5 billion rand. And in 2019, it lost 5.1 billion rand. That is 16 billion rand over the course of 3 financial years. No wonder South African Airlines has been hiding its financial results. That's an absolute disaster. That's nearly $1 billion US dollars. And if you take it back to the exchange rate before the current crisis, it's well over $1 billion US lost by the airline over the course of 3 years. So what is going on? Why does the ANC government want to hang on to South African Airlines against all common sense and all reason? At a time when money is more desperately needed to feed children, to prevent people from starving, to ensure that food parcels are getting to South Africans in need, and to protect wages and help the informal sector survive this crisis, which is being created by the government. On top of the losses from the last 3 years, since the company has gone into business rescue, or what we would consider Chapter 11 here in the United States, basically bankruptcy, reorganization, since that's happened in December of 2019, South African Airlines lost an additional 9.9 billion rand, or 10 billion rand, from the 5th of December until the 30th of April. That's another $540 million gone. Poof, completely gone, never to be recovered. I suggest that money could have been much more wisely spent elsewhere. Yet now there's discussion about the government continuing to bail out this airline, which it previously in April refused to give money to, over the next 3 years, potentially bailing them out. Let's put this in perspective. Since 1994, at the end of the apartheid era and the first democratic elections in South Africa, South African Airlines has received over 57 billion rand in bailouts. That's something on the order of over 4 billion US dollars when you take into effect the actual exchange rates at the time. Well over 4 billion US dollars over the course of that time. The airline has not been profitable since 2011 and has been so poorly managed and so poorly run that it couldn't even be bothered to deliver financial results until 3 years after 2017. We've just got these results. Now, the problem here, of course, is that this is a vanity project for the country and for the government of South Africa and now the ANC, who didn't create South African Airlines. This state-owned entity has been around for decades, long before the ANC took over control of the country. Yet 2 things stand out here that should frighten people. The first of which, as the Department of Public Enterprises, which is responsible for state-owned enterprises, says that liquidation is not an option. Well, when you live in cloud cuckoo land, or you live on cloud 9, or an alternate reality, perhaps you can make that statement. But the fiscal situation does not agree with that position. The airline must be liquidated, its assets must be sold off, and reorganized, or what's left of the airline should be sold to another party in an effort to resurrect the airline or to create a new one. Whatever will happen, there will be an airline in South Africa that will come out of this. Whether it will be state-owned, hopefully not, or it will be privately held, hopefully so, we do not know. But the government continuing to perpetuate this fiscal mess by bailing out South African Airlines is harming South African citizens. It's diverting resources that we more wisely spent to helping South African citizens. not rescuing an airline with a few thousand employees and even an entire business ecosphere that's not much larger than that when you take into consideration suppliers. Yes, this is difficult for those who work for the airline, but something will come back. Someone must provide transportation to fly SAA's 9.7 million passengers last year. Someone will need to fly them after the COVID-19 lockdowns are over. That will be picked up by some airline or a new entity or reorganized South African Airlines. But to continue pouring money down an airline that has had poor management, consistent and persistent interference from the government and from unions in the management of the airline, and become a patronage machine is not a wise move. Now, the second thing that's disturbing about this situation with the bankruptcy of South African Airlines is that South African Labor Court recently halted layoffs by the airline during business rescue because they said that the business rescue administrators had acted unfairly. Are you serious? This reminds me of a few years ago when General Motors was undergoing a drastic reorganization when the U.S. government stole the company from shareholders and turned it into a state-owned enterprise briefly before issuing stock. When that happened, General Motors sold off much of its international operations, including Opel in Europe, which had once been a profit machine for decades for General Motors. And it also sold off its operations in South Africa. But when it did that, the unions demanded that they keep their jobs and that the company be responsible for paying for it. They sort of missed the whole concept that the company was not profitable and therefore was eliminating loss leaders and loss-making operations. The insanity of labor unions in South Africa, the sense of privilege, and the concept that companies exist for their purposes is beyond the pale. And that's the situation here. Between the Department of Public Enterprises saying that liquidation is not an option, they're not living in reality, and the labor unions stopping job losses and firings or workers being made redundant, is just unrealistic. Where is the money supposed to come from? From the state purse? The South African Treasury is empty, folks. There's no money there. So, why do we talk about this today? Because some very confusing news has come out with acting director of the Department of Public Enterprises, Kakatso Tlakudi, has said that over the 3 fiscal years, this year and the next 2 fiscal years, that South African Airlines would be getting an additional 9.9 billion rand. Now, the claim is that this is not new funding, but this conflicts with some media reports which say this is new funding for $202 million this year. Whatever the case is, why is the South African government continuing to supply the money that was in its budget for this fiscal year? That should have been suspended the moment that this company went into bankruptcy proceedings. You shouldn't be pouring good money after bad, and that's what's happening in South Africa. So why won't the ANC allow South African Airlines to die off? Why will they not allow it to be liquidated? What is going on here? It's certainly not jobs. We're only talking a few tens of thousands of jobs. Far more jobs were cost when EdCon went into business rescue. And we haven't even touched on the topic of SA Express, another airline that is already in liquidation, yet is still scheduled to receive $9 million in funding from the government this fiscal year. What is that about? The airline is being liquidated. Who's that money going to? Why would you spend that? Do not spend that money there. Just the money that's been spent on South African Airlines from the 5th of December till the 30th of April was $540 million US. Now, since March, the airline has largely been grounded except for a few contract flights to repatriate South African nationals from abroad and some cargo. But most of their flights have been grounded. Yet they still spent $540 million. I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that $540 million would have been much more wisely spent feeding children in South Africa. South Africa has approximately 22 million citizens under the age of 20 in school for the most part. At least 15 million of those are in desperate financial straits. Those 15 million, that works out to $36 per child and would have bought a number of meals to help feed these children. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. There's my thoughts about the situation with South African Airlines and the refusal to allow it to be die or to be liquidated. What's going on? This can't continue. It's time to move on from this state-owned enterprise and focus resources where they're much better serve the citizens of South Africa. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel by smashing that button right down there. Be sure to push the bell icon to get notifications anytime I do a video or a live stream. And you can leave your comments. I welcome comments, both positive and negative. I'll answer them as best I can. And please smash that like button. Likes drive viewership. This has been an Indaba Africa production. I'm Chris. Thank you for tuning in on this video about South African Airlines. Have a pleasant day, folks.